Welcome back to Incremental, the Continuous Improvement Podcast. This is our practice edition where we try to wrestle the concepts into real-world improvements in the shop and in the business and hopefully yield some positive results, or if not, at least some learning which we can put back into the system and improve how we go about making improvements. I'm Uriel Eisen.
I'm Devin Bedoni.
This Got is a incremental. Quote? This is incremental.
Neither the voice of authority nor the weight of reason compare to results from an experiment. As I'm saying this, I feel like maybe we have used this one again, or at some point, but maybe we just read it. In any case, it's a good one.
It is a good one. I think this gets back to the idea of moving away from opinions and what people think and like having meetings where you sort of go with whatever the most compelling person is, rather than just being like, okay, here's some ideas we came up with. Let's try them and see what happens. And often what happens is not what everyone guessed would happen, and it could be better and it could be worse.
It is. I think also this leads to sort of a logical conclusion if you're trying to run a business. And sort of touching on something that we didn't get a chance to talk about last episode, which is just disruption in a business. I think as soon as you start trying to make decisions based on results, based on actual experimental results, you have to run experiments, obviously. And as soon as you realize how much disruption a lot of those experiments can create, you will tend to make the changes small, which is
interesting,
something that we keep coming back to in Toyota Kata and in general is these small incremental improvements, because I think if you are trying to run these large experiments, it'll sink you basically, but you still want to run experiments, so they need to be these kind of bite-sized pieces.
Yeah, it's something we keep relearning, and I think we are getting better at it. It's just like, I feel like we used to dive into improvements of like, we're going to improve this. And now we sort of dive into of like, this can be improved. I wonder I wonder if this is the way. Yeah. Right? Like, how can we test that?
Yeah. It also comes back to the target condition concept, which I think many of us, certainly myself, we have a problem of some sort in a business, and we chew on it, and we stay up in the middle of the night thinking about it, and we talk with our folks at work about how we might solve it, and then at some point we say, okay, we're going to fix this. Here's what we're going to do. Which is, you've sort of skipped the whole early phase, which is like the target condition phase. You've just kind of like decided on an implementation.
That's true, and that becomes the goal. It's the new implementation.
The implementation becomes the goal, and there's this idea of target conditions of saying we want to achieve this. Well, like the big target condition example in Toyota is one-piece flow, right? Like they're clearly not there. They are striving towards that, but it can be small things too, where you can be like, what would an example be? I mean, for me, it'd be like, we want to get all setups down to less than 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we don't have a pathway yet. So it's just a target, and the hurdles are large, and that's where the experiments come in, is trying to figure out how to achieve that target, not just let's implement this theoretical solution to maybe get our setups down.
I think, interesting. I feel like, don't let the implementation become the goal. I feel like that is such an easy trap to fall into, where you go like, wow, we need a space for this or something. And then you're like, all right, we need a new desk. Let's build a desk. And then you design a desk and you build the desk. And it's like, all right, we did the thing.
Yeah.
But if you look at A3, you've skipped a few really critical parts. A large chunk of that is the beginning of like, asking the 5 whys, and and then setting like, what is the current condition?
Yeah.
What is the target condition? And then the last stage of, did our little experiment, like what were the results and how does it compare to that target condition?
Yeah. And I think it's also like focusing on making implementation the goal really quashes creativity. I think.
Interesting.
It like reduces your number of possible outcomes.
It's so funny. It's like so habitual. I'm just thinking like we're having an issue where we're tracking dust into the shop because right outside the shop door is like crushed gravel with a lot of dust in it. So it's really annoying. It was less of an issue. We redid, like we opened a new door into the shop. And so now you're stepping directly into the shop instead of sort of walking through another room where a lot of that stuff would fall off. So we're noticing it a lot more.
Yeah.
And in this conversation, I'm just realizing like already that problem in my head is now about a solution that we came up with.
Yeah.
Which is getting those rubber mats with the holes in them and putting them outside the door. So like you're taking a couple steps on a non-dusty surface where dust can sort of fall through, and then putting one inside the shop. So again, but like
it'll be fine in a minute because it's raining, so it's going to become mud.
Oh, great.
Yeah, the dust will be gone, just mud.
So in my head, it's already transitioned into like the problem is solved once we buy these mats and they arrive and we put them down.
Yeah.
Instead of like, all right, the next thing we're going to try is getting these mats. I wonder how much dust that will reduce in the shop.
Uh-huh.
Which is such a different framing.
It is, yeah. It's very hard.
It's funny. Yeah. Just then talking about it, I'm like, wow. Like I do that so habitually where it's like we have a problem and then you think about how to solve it and then you come up with a solution that's exciting and you're like, that's the solution. And then you implement it.
Yeah.
Which is absurd to even say you come up with a solution, I guess, even in saying that, right? You didn't come up with a solution. You came up with at best, a possible solution.
Right.
Came up with an idea.
Yeah. That has no bearing on. There's no way to really. Yeah. It's kind of like without the target condition, there's no way to sort of judge its effectiveness. It's very objective.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's very subjective.
I think Toyota, they talk about like buying slower machines and buying, I don't know, not worse things. They're actually better, turns out. But in being very clear about what boxes things need to check. I think otherwise you sort of go out there to buy a tool or a piece of equipment or whatever, improve the shop, and you sort of end up using like quote unquote quality or cost to gauge how good the thing is.
Uh-huh.
Right? Like putting down flooring, you'd be like, well, let's get good flooring instead of like, what are the things it needs to do? How long do we want it to last? Then you document it and then you compare it and you say, oh, that really quote unquote good flooring is actually less chemical resistant and we have chemical. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Cool. You want to jump into some?
Should we talk about some improvements?
Some things we did? I did nothing because
I do not believe that at all.
I think I mentioned last week that I was shutting down production for the day.
Yeah.
To try and bang out the electrical work in our new shop. That ended up being 3 days.
Yeah.
More or less all hands on deck. And
Gotcha.
Well, yeah. Kind of 3 days, and then our phase converter went down. So.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So we did not do a lot of A, production, or B, improvements in the classical sense. But we did run some nice conduit, I have to say.
Very nice.
Mostly Quorum ran nice conduit. You can tell where I ran conduit because I'm not nearly as attention to detail focused on that kind of stuff.
Nice.
As he is. Like his is perfect.
That's awesome.
It is great. Like I was happy to pay for that.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I'll bang through some and we can you can grill me on.
Okay. Putting my grill hat on.
Good process. We moved the meeting area away from the machine because it's loud and it's normally running.
Yep.
And it was convenient because the enclosure is steel and we use a lot of magnets. And so
we have this identical issue.
Yeah. So I finally, now that we have the upstairs access, screwed a magnetic whiteboard to the wall up there. So we moved our meeting up there, which I think is going to be nice to start to have all the equipment we need to run an efficient meeting. like before it was a little ad hoc because that area was really optimized for production. And so sort of setting aside a space, I think we'll start to come up with new ideas for how to build a better, like how to run a better meeting.
Yeah. And as you're saying this, it's making me realize that we're going to need to make our job board whiteboards and all of that stuff rolling. Because I think it's very critical to have that stuff central in the production space.
Yeah.
For during production, but it's also pretty critical to have access to that while you're having a meeting.
Interesting.
And so I think it'd be nice to be able to roll it somewhere quieter.
Right.
Like our break room in the new space. I guess we could have done that in the current space, sort of, but making it mobile seems pretty key.
Yeah, I'm wondering. I think inherently we are approaching the morning meeting as, in saying this.
Yeah, right.
as
something we need
to do, but it's disruptive and takes time away from production. So you might as well get the machines going and then do a morning meeting, which on one hand makes a ton of sense. On the other hand, I wonder if it sort of is it reeks of we're here to produce stuff.
Yes.
Right? Not we're here to improve systems.
Yeah.
But also we are here to produce stuff, so I don't know.
I agree.
Anyway.
We often stop the machine.
Yeah.
While we chat because it's obnoxious.
Yeah, they're loud.
Yeah.
Interesting. Anyway, so that was that. What lean waste does that reduce?
Which?
Moving our meeting area. Hard to say.
What is it? The 10th? The 9th?
Confusion. It feels more like, yeah, I'm not sure. That's funny. Wasted human, I don't know. Anyway, I'm not going to try to shoehorn it in, I guess, but.
That is funny. We all know that it's better, but why?
Yeah. It sort of feels like it would be confusion.
I mean, there's legitimate defects because you can't hear what somebody's saying.
Defect. Yeah. That's true. Yes. So I added a banister. I feel like it's easy to say safety first, but
doing it is harder than saying it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, from every perspective, I feel like there's just so many examples of medium safety that can sort of just get kicked down the road a bit.
Yeah.
And it's hard to just be like, no, we're stopping, we're doing this thing right.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that was an eye-opener when I first had employees. And it wasn't huge things at that point, but it was like, oh, we need a first aid kit.
Right.
I never had one because I didn't prioritize it for myself. And those kinds of things were like, oh, this is actually, probably legally required and also fundamentally important to just be responsible.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. There's ones that I I know I'm not willing to compromise, like breathing toxic chemicals, for example. Like some shops who do paint, it's pretty terrible. We've added hoods to anything that smells basically and pull it out of the building.
Yeah.
That's one I'm pretty serious about. But yeah, it's easy to just not. It's funny to me, when I had the same thing when I hired people, and then there's tasks that I sort of felt uncomfortable asking them to do, so I would do it.
Yeah.
You're like, wow, I'm really not valuing my own safety. Anyway. And then I guess, I don't know if we need to dig into it for adding a banister and safety in general, but I would say in general, I think it's easy also to forget about fundamental to reducing batch size is process availability, right? We talked about this when I trimmed the highway to the shop, right? Because we bike to the shop.
Yeah.
And if you need to swerve into traffic to get around a branch, Or like I've been trimming some blackberries that are laying on the shoulder, so there's thorns. So now if someone gets a flat, they either miss their ferry going home, which is a bummer, or they are in late because, so like all these things I think you can also think about from it's so easy to focus on when you're running fast. Like we talk about like value add versus non-value add activity and optimizing and which one you should optimize. And most people and companies work on optimizing their value add activities, which account typically for about 15% of your day.
Yeah.
And so really you should focus on non-value add activities.
Yeah.
And this feels a lot like that, where no one says like, is it a critical business function for us to walk up and down the stairs?
Right.
Like you'd be like, well, no, but it really is, right? If people fall down the stairs beyond this feels like, I don't know, callous to say, like beyond, obviously there's a problem because you've injured someone and there's then legal issues and it's going to be very expensive.
Right.
But there's also the issue that like your production is going to grind to a halt.
Yeah.
And so it makes very good sense in every direction to make sure that even if things are slightly slower or slightly more expensive, that they're appropriately, I don't know, like you said the other day, like you can't have people packing things on the floor. Like when I eliminated our shipping area and I was saying like, optimize for like the 85 or 90% of the packages.
Yeah.
But like, you do need a plan for the big stuff. You don't want people just like herking around a really heavy box on the floor, bending over.
Yeah.
So that's the banister. Clearing the production area. We've been trying to get stuff out of production area. I mean,
you mean just like excess, extraneous?
Just stuff. Yeah. Like I made the mistake. Well, it's only time will tell of buying very cheap tools at an auction.
Oh.
And they were so cheap, I was like, I'll get it.
Are you talking about all those presses and stuff?
Yeah, so now we have like a bunch of pneumatic and manual presses sort of clogging up our our space. And like they were so cheap that, like, I'm not sure it was a bad decision, but I also wonder if it was.
It was probably not a bad financial decision, but it sounds like it was a bad decision in terms of your current state and what it's doing to your space.
Possibly. Yeah, I don't know. And then once we implement them for that cost, will that be worth it? Probably not. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, so they're in there. We found a nice, a better place for them where they're sort of out of the way.
Yeah.
But they're still taking up space in what is a very small shop.
Yeah.
So, just in general though, I think like that's something we don't do enough.
Clearing out extraneous stuff.
Yeah. Like I don't think we have a very good 3S habit. I would say in the shop.
we've more or less fallen off, and it's really hard to establish these things and have them stick in this. Like I guess I keep coming back to this, like making production versus process improvement mindset. It feels very, very key, and it's very hard to break when. I think especially, I mean, maybe forever, but especially at this phase of business where the ongoing financial viability of the business feels tenuous at times.
Right.
Not to focus on production, seriously.
Right.
It can be really, really hard to try and switch that gear.
Yeah, I think for us, like, I don't know where to land on this. I feel like we are making a lot of changes. Like the shop is a bit of a mess since we we rebuilt the whole end of it and moved a whole bunch of stuff around, and it's not dialed. Like it's not super clean and nothing where it shouldn't be, and everything's organized and visually clear. Like I don't think that's our strong suit. Mm-hmm. And yet all of the improvements we've been making feel really worthwhile. Like, I don't know if I'm undervaluing how much like a clean workspace and a non-cluttered workspace would enhance the work.
Yeah.
Maybe I am.
Undervaluing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I am as well.
But also, I don't know how to deal with that as compared to like improve the bottleneck of like, I just don't know. I don't know if like, is it just,
I think it can be hard to even find the bottleneck when you're working in
maybe that's
medium chaos.
medium chaos. That's our new shirt. Yes. So that was clearing out the production area. It's going to be an ongoing thing. Just getting rid of stuff. It's easy to accumulate and hard to get rid of. And then lastly, I spent a lot of time reprogramming how we make our 1-inch cams. It is now, so I finally proved it out fully. We let it run for a bunch of hours with us in the shop, and it all runs well.
Cool.
There were a number of things I didn't foresee that I felt like I should have foreseen.
Like machining wise, or just general
like
process?
So we switched to those taller inserts, higher profile insert, with the goal of basically sometimes the blocks of aluminum come unclamped and break a bit. Yeah. And that bit is $50. So it's sort of a bummer. Yeah. But also then we have to like stop the machine, take,
That's
whatever,
the bigger
do
bummer.
a tool change, all that stuff. And so, so that was the reason for the taller inserts. But then in making those taller inserts, I didn't really think about how, so now when we feed in Op2, when we bring the gripper fingers down, we can't feed down as far because the gripper fingers hit those taller inserts. Mm-hmm. I sort of didn't consider that ahead of time. Mm-hmm. And so we had some of that. In reprogramming after I made the soft jaws, realized that like the tool, like it gets so tight getting the tools in to do all the cutting. Yeah. And we're talking about 40 thousandths of an inch here. So I guess in my head, I was like, this is great. It's all, the
height difference is 40 thou?
In those inserts. They stick up an extra 40 thou. Yeah. Which sounds extremely minimal, but
until your tools are running into them.
Yeah. So I guess I was a little, I don't know if disappointed in myself is quite the word, but that I feel like I should have thought it through more ahead of time. Of like, going back to the like running experiments, like viewing things as experiments rather than implementing quote unquote solutions. Yeah. I was like, oh, the aluminum blocks are pulling out. There are these taller inserts. Great. That's a win. Get those taller inserts. Right. Now let me go through my programs and see how many of them I can actually put them in and do a real analysis of that. I feel like we talk about this sometimes, like sitting down with a spreadsheet. Yeah. Right. When you're like, how many job types do we have? And it's like, well, can you just go through some of your data and put that into 5 buckets?
It's very embarrassing. There's so many things that we've brought up on this podcast that I need to do that for that I still haven't done.
Yeah, because it feels like a total waste of time, I think, rather than just, I have a gut feeling that it will work. And so we're going to move in this direction. Yeah. And I think that was the part that I sort of was noticing is like, I made that improvement. I did get it to work, but it felt like a little bit of luck that I was able to squeeze it all in. Yeah. And that's a little worrisome, I guess.
I think this is also...
I had already spent like a day and a half. Yeah. Including machining stuff before complete... Yeah, anyway.
I think this is one of those scenarios... Well, to tag on to what you just said, it's a very important place to sit down and run the experiments because... I think it would be easy, I'm guessing, as you, to be like, I run stuff on a gripper system every freaking day. Yeah. I know this system inside and out. Right. When the reality is like, you've done like maybe 10 of these layouts ever. Yeah. Right. Over the past 3 years. Right. So in reality, like, you've barely scratched the surface on actually designing these systems. You've done a handful of them and they've been iterative and like kind of like a little bit, not to throw you under the bus, but like a little bit piecemeal. Like you've just been figuring it out as you go. Right. And so I think this is a perfect example of recognizing that your gut sense based on your daily interaction with this system does not relate to the reality of your knowledge of the system. And I deal with this all the time as well. I think it's a
Yeah.
universal human thing.
But it's also like back to the quote, right? It's
Yeah.
like the experiment. Like if I had come into that, let me rephrase it. If someone was working for me and they said, "Hey, I'm going to change to these inserts," I feel like I would very
Yeah.
easily say like, "Okay, yeah, here's the process for figuring this out," right?
Uh-huh.
Step 1, model it up and make sure that our tools will clear it.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
But then I skip it because
Right, because you have a gut sense of
it's like,
capability and comprehension.
yeah, it's very hard to manage. It's like standing in the window of a burger joint and thinking about how they do production.
Uh-huh.
Like I don't do that with the same. It's hard to bring the same level of like clarity and perspective, of course,
Yeah.
to your own stuff. But
Yeah.
little slap on the wrist that I did get away with it. In doing that, I was talking to Rob Lockwood about. He had some very cool ideas around getting the post processor to output the XY coordinates of the stock centroid.
Yeah.
And that might take some math, but basically it could rewrite it would export the data to the right macro variable so that it could do the pick and place based on your
Yeah.
yeah, so that was cool. It sort of got me thinking about how to system, I up to of this system, like placing the part back into the vise
Yeah.
after the flip. This is kind of in the weeds.
It's a more variable process.
It has a stack of variables
Yeah.
that make it feel tricky to be able to write not have to hand edit the program, and not like right now every time I output a program I slow the machine down as it loads op2 and watch it and then tweak it to get the X, Y, and Z correct. Zooming out into more broad lean terms, Shigeo Shingo, there's a section
Quivering
on
in his boots.
set, don't adjust.
Yeah.
Right? Like at the very least, I should know exactly where it should go, and I should write that number into the program.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be like, so like a big part of the SMED system is this idea of like set, don't adjust. Well, no, standardize. But if it's not standard, set, don't adjust, meaning things like on an injection molding machine, you need a certain temperature of your mold to get like where the plastic fully fills the mold cavity. But then, let's see.
Instead of like running a shot and seeing how it filled and then bringing the temperature up a little bit.
Exactly.
And then running another shot, you have some way of measuring the temperature of the coolant.
Yeah, and so in an example he has in the book is like measuring the temperature is people would put their hand on the hose coming out of the mold of the cooling water coming out of the mold, and then they would adjust an open close valve to feed more or less water through the mold.
Yeah.
And so it's totally done by feel.
Yeah.
And by guess and check. And so immediately in my head I was like,
and the solution to that was like putting markers on the valves, right? So
exactly. I thought like, you do a PID loop and whatever, and it was like, no, you put a piece of wood behind the valve and put an arrow and increments as it turns.
Yeah.
Like I think they added a bigger hand wheel to the valve, so it was more fine tuned, and then you can do that guess and check per part.
Yeah. Once.
And then record the value, like where that valve should sit.
Which is what you're doing now, but you should be able to take that to the next step of not doing the first guess and check.
Exactly. I think it should, those are all, it's a fully deterministic system. So in CAD, I should be able to, at the very least, pull the numbers out, and at best, the numbers would be fed automatically to the system.
Yeah.
Anyway, so fun to think through. I think back to the thing you've been saying over the past few episodes about like you need to eliminate the chaos before you can really improve things. I feel like step one is sort of thinking about like documenting all the variables that lead to that op2 position.
Yeah, well, I was going to say to the whole design process of a gripper automation fixture is like, what are the variables? You have Right. Like they're probably, if you sit down to write them, is under 20.
Yeah.
That you could.
That would fully describe.
It would fully describe all of the
Yeah.
potential conflicts
Yeah.
in a system like that. And then you would have something you could follow yourself, which
Right.
sounds like would be helpful, or
Yep.
you could hand off to somebody else easily.
Yep. And will I do it? Only time will tell.
Got to make that 30 minutes a day or whatever.
Yeah. I have a lot of 30 minutes a day items,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
I'm so behind at the moment with the holidays coming up, and there's a lot of projects I'd love to get done in time,
Yep.
and people waiting on me for all sorts of information.
Yeah. That's hard.
To be a bottleneck. Yes.
Oh, the joys.
Exactly. Anyway,
Wraps
that's all
us
I
up.
got.
Thank you all for listening. You can find me on the internet at likeandprecision.com, on the Instagram, lichen_MFG.
And you can find me at austeremfg.com and austere_manufacturing on Instagram, and the podcast at Incremental CI. Also, we have a Patreon. If you haven't already, go have a look. Support what we're doing. If you find you're getting value from this weekly exploration, consider supporting it.
Yeah, and continued feedback is great. We love the conversations that have begun and continued from this. And if you have been secretly harboring thoughts and you want to talk to us,
Thoughts or resentments.
shoot us a message.
Please.
We'd love to hear it. And we'll talk to you next week.